All right. Hello, team. Everybody, welcome to our weekly call, our conference call every Tuesday here. Matt Ham. We got some new faces on the call. I'm the co-founder of Uprint Faith and Personal Development, and we work specifically with the Red Earth team across the spectrum to bring some encouragement, some motivation, inspiration, challenge some thoughts, and really help drive this narrative of individual and corporate excellence. So we've been doing this now for about 6 months. It's been awesome getting to know a lot of the teams here and navigate some of the challenges that you guys face. And so we hope that these calls are always helpful and they meet you in a good spot to be able to kind of carry you guys forward. And what a better year to have picked to bring this into play than the wonder that is 2020. Every day we step into a new challenge, a new adventure. But again, I'm a firm believer that it's forging something in us, and that if we are able to maintain consistency, discipline, and mindset, and all this kind of stuff through a year like this, then man, we've got a smoother road ahead. So that being said, I got a text message this morning from one of our personal mentoring kind of clients, if you will. It's a guy that I have a relationship with, and we work together quite often. And he asked me, he said, Matt, how do I begin to influence discipline? And it's a great question. How do you begin to influence discipline? And I was having a conversation with him, and then I started to talk with John just about some of the challenges just around that you face, right? And we've talked about this off and on a little bit. But specifically, how do you begin to influence discipline? And so today's kind of topic that we want to address is this idea of discipline. How do we begin to really step into that? And it really pairs well with a thought that I had this weekend. When every weekend, actually, over the past, probably 3 or 4 months, we have started gathering as a group of folks to engage in some prayer and to really come into some fellowship community together. And as we were praying this past week, it was like this thought just kind of downloaded into my mind. And it was the placebo effect. And the placebo effect, if you know science or medicine at all, is if they had 6 people, they would have 6 different pills, but only 5 of the pills would actually have the medicine necessary to affect a medical change in the person, and one would be called a placebo. So it's an effectiveless pill, essentially. It looks like all the other pills, it tastes like all the other pills, but it has no medical value in it. It's a placebo. And what's interesting is the placebo effect is what happens when all 6 people take the pill, one of them being completely medically ineffective, but that person actually thinks that they're getting better. So the placebo effect is when someone's taking a medically ineffective pill that produces a certain result. But again, that can't last. So the placebo effect is only kind of a mindset dynamic. It doesn't actually have any medical value in it. And what was interesting in this, when it comes to discipline and when it comes to kind of how we live out our daily lives and our businesses and our works, I think a lot of us might be taking a placebo. We're doing things that have the appearance of being effective, but are they really effective? And so it's like we're taking a pill that we think is actually helping us, when in reality, it's not moving us anywhere. We've gotten used to the placebo. And so if we lined up kind of your sales team or different builders or whatever, and we started to assess our processes and are we moving toward excellence, the question is are you actually in a healthy environment of consistency and discipline and moving in a certain direction? Or are you just kind of like going through the motions and taking the placebo? And so this concept to me has been really challenging in my own life over the past couple of weeks, because I'm going, where and what areas of my life am I actually influencing change? Am I actually taking the responsibility to go out and begin to drive, results, versus just taking a placebo, right? Just checking the box and kind of calling it a day. And what's interesting in this whole concept of discipline is I think the first step is what I've just described, this placebo mentality, is you have to be willing to be self-reflective. And a lot of people just don't like doing that. I was meeting with another kind of coaching client last week, and she's stepping into a sales role, and she was wanting some sales tips and so forth. And I said, hey, first of all, we've got to do some inward work and some self-reflection. She says, like, why do we have to do that? I don't want to do that. And I said, because if you don't have that inward mindset, you can go and do all the right stuff, but it's not going to be sustainable. So the key is this is number one, I think you've got to be willing to look in the mirror. A lot of people don't like that. In fact, this one person, they said, well, that's just vain. I said, no, it's not vain. It's the responsible thing to do. You have got to go look in the mirror. You've got to take a self-assessment. John shared with me an email that he sent out to some of the team members this week, and as I was reading through it, it was really impactful. So I'm going to pull that up here. And he asked these questions at the end. He said, if you took your week and you did an assessment of your week, did you spend at least 10 hours on the phone? Were you spending at least 10 hours in personal appointments? Were you spending at least 10 hours into kind of creative thought or kind of outbound creativity, writing notes or making videos or whatnot from an outbound perspective? And then did you spend at least 5 hours in personal development this week? And what's interesting is if most people took an assessment of their lives, I guarantee you that their actions would be out of alignment with what they actually thought. One of the things that's really powerful on these devices here we call our cell phones is looking back on our week and seeing how much time we spend on our devices. If you asked me, Matt, how many hours a day do you spend on your cell phone? I'd go, I don't know, maybe 4 hours, something like that. And that even seems like a lot. But if you look up the truth, I spend about 8 hours a day on my phone. And actually, this kind of device here on our cells, if you go into your settings, if you have an iPhone, you can actually go into your screen time here, okay? And it'll show you on what devices are you spending your time. Like today, I've got an hour and 43 minutes of total usage, all right? 42 of those minutes are on text messaging, 10 minutes on Instagram, 10 minutes on Facebook, right? Being real vulnerable with you guys. But the reality is of an hour and 43 minutes on my phone, 20 minutes have been spent on, and there's actually some time on Twitter too. So almost 30 minutes of my day already has been on social media, right? Holy cow, Matt, you need to take your own medicine and you need to look at your schedule. Are you actually doing something that is moving you in that direction? Now, here's what I could say. The time that I'm spending on some of that social media is actually part of my business model. That's what we do, right? So I'm making connections. I'm sending messages to folks. It's kind of a marketing dynamic. But again, that's where you've got to get real honest and say, man, look in the mirror and take a self-assessment. Look in the mirror and take a self-assessment. Now, this is hard to do. Most folks don't do it, which is why we get into a spot where most folks are undisciplined when it comes to how they navigate their day, And so the question here is are you actually consistent in your actions, your activity, the energy that you're throwing out into the world versus what you say that you want to be doing? And again, this email that John sent, it'd be a great activity. In fact, I would challenge all of you guys to do a bit of an assessment of your time. Look at your day. If you're spending, 8 hours a day in the office or at work or whatnot, or 10 hours or whatever the number is actually begin to break down where you're spending the most of your time. And is that consistent with what it is that you say you want to be a part of? Because everybody says they want to make more money. Everybody says they want to have a great income. Everybody says they want to have a great business. But are your actions and activity and energy output consistent with that? And most folks don't take the time to take that assessment. Most folks don't take the time. And I can't make you do it. John can't make you do it. Nobody can make you do it but you. And that's where we step into the second part of our conversation today. No one can force you or make you to do anything that you truly don't want to do. You can go through the motions and have a job, and you can kind of, check the boxes and all that kind of stuff. And quite frankly, it's just an unfulfilled life, and it's going to run out. But you guys are all in the position where you get to own your days, you get to own your direction, and you get to be a part of influencing change and actually starting to live out the life you say you want to live. Listen, it's an incredible opportunity. I mean, I remember myself as a 22-year-old kid getting hired to go work on a sales team where John was the sales manager. And so much of the work ethic and just mentality and sales techniques and so forth that John taught me as a 22-year-old kid now influence how I approach my daily activity. And it wasn't just me. We had a whole sales team there of guys. And, it's easy to kind of look at somebody who's been successful and go, oh man, they're lucky. They've just, everything goes their way. Right? And it's easy to have that mindset, and a lot of people do. One of the things my father has always said, my dad is 34 years at the same business, kind of grew up in this organization, became one of the executives at an organization, was actually a distributor for Miller Lite beer. He started on a beer truck delivering beer, and then he became the chain accounts manager for all of the different chain stores after 34 years in the business. Had a great reputation, made a great living. It was great for our family. But one of the things my dad always said was hard work creates good luck. And, it's really interesting as you break that down. Hard work creates good luck. Because when you put in the effort, when you are consistent in your actions, when you come to the table every day and do the things that need to be done, there are results that are produced that other people call luck. It's an old kind of proverb from Seneca way back when, I think early like Roman Greek thought. It says, no fair wind blows for the ship without direction. You can't have a favorable wind come behind you if you really don't know where you're going. And so when you start to know where you're going and you start to work hard and head in that direction, then the winds of favor and luck, as it were, come alongside that consistent effort. And so that's really why we begin to do this, put discipline in play. But the problem and the biggest obstacle for this, for most folks, is themselves. And, this is where I had this phrase come into my mind as I was preparing this morning, and it is shift your if. Shift your if. You see, a lot of people approach their days and they go, oh, if we just had more phone traffic, if we just had more models, if we just had more financing, if we had more leads, if the sun was out today, if. You see, a lot of times the problem is we use our ifs to blame outside situations. We use our if to blame other things instead of shifting the if back onto ourselves and taking responsibility. If I make 10 phone calls today, if I write 5 handwritten notes, if I go and connect with 10 new real estate brokers this week, if I go to my current owners and spend some time in conversation with them to build relationships so we can talk about referrals, if I do the things that I know I'm supposed to do, if I do the things that John has taught us to do through the training here at Red Earth, if I do the things that are consistent, then action and activity will follow. Excuse me. We put the if on other people, and when we do that, we lose any capacity to change it. because that way our entire world is contingent upon outside or external circumstances. Well, if I had more money, if this hadn't happened, if we had more furnished models, if we had a referral program in place, if we had a sales bonus, if. When you begin taking that mindset into your day, you have lost all capacity to change your environment. Because now you're waiting on all of this stuff to step into what you know you need to do. So shifting your if is a great way to begin to take responsibility, and going back to that idea of placebo effect, to actually begin to influence the activity, the energy you're outputting, in the direction you're going. So you have to say, no, if I make the phone calls, if I do the things I know I'm supposed to do, then the results will follow. And most folks would rather use the if to blame outside and external situations. But again, I can't make you do it. You have to decide to do it. So along those lines, I want to ask you a question. And again, you guys won't answer this on the call. This is more of a hypothetical. But I would dare say, does anyone know who Tom Bourdillon or Charles Evans is? Tom Bourdillon or Charles Evans as it relates to history? And most folks would say no. And then I said, well, what about Sir Edmund Hillary? And some people would, some people wouldn't, but Sir Edmund Hillary is most well known for being the first man to ever climb Mount Everest. But what you don't know is that Tom Bourdillon and Charles Evans were actually ahead of Sir Edmund Hillary. In fact, men tried to conquer Mount Everest for 30 years and failed. The first attempt was in 1921, and I think it was like 1956 when Edmund Hillary finally made the ascent. 1953. So you're looking at 32 years that people tried to do this. But on the very same expedition where Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, who was a Sherpa, when they ascended it, Tom Bourdillon and Charles Evans were ahead of them. But nobody knows who those guys are because those guys cashed it in, right? And the interesting piece here is I love this analogy. So these mountain climbers would actually get what's called a Sherpa. A Sherpa is someone who is indigenous to that area and who knew the climate, who knew the weather, who knew the mountain. And Sherpas would come alongside these explorers to help them really better understand the environment so they could be successful. And as I thought about this in relation to where we are as an organization, John Pinter is a Sherpa. He's been in the business for the better part of 30 years. He knows the ins and outs. He understands the environment. He knows the weather. He knows the economy. He knows and so when you get to climbing a mountain, you need to rely on a Sherpa. And that's the whole point of the resources of Red Earth Marketing, is they are the Sherpa for real estate and real estate development. They know it. And so you either trust that process and rely on the Sherpa, or you kind of go off on your own expedition. And at some point in time, you got to say, hey, am I a part of this team who's going to move in this direction using the kind of indigenous Sherpa knowledge, or am I going to go try to climb it on my own? Well, Tom Bourdillon and Charles Evans were climbing to the final summit, but they got stuck 300 feet from the peak. And because of the atmosphere and their oxygen systems failed, I'm not blaming these guys. It was just, some of it was circumstance. Their oxygen system failed, but they packed it in and they left. But here you had Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, his Sherpa. And they got stuck for 2 days in a blizzard at 27,900 feet, about 1,200 feet from the peak of Mount Everest. And so they waited it out for 2 days during this blizzard in very intense conditions. But after the blizzard cleared, they got to their final approach to the summit. And when they got to the summit, here's what happened, and this is what's powerful. They came across an impasse. There's this 40-foot vertical rock face, like some 300 feet from the summit of Mount Everest. And Edmund Hillary, at that moment, had to figure out a way. So the Sherpa got him up to this point, but the Sherpa had never been here before. This is the final summit. This is the final peak, 40-foot rock face. And Edmund Hillary at 38,300 feet or whatever it was, had to find a way up to shimmy himself up this rock face to get to the summit of Mount Everest. And that trespass is now called the Hillary Step. The final step to get to the summit could only be done by the man who was in that moment taking that step. The Sherpa got him to a certain point, and then he had to get to the summit. And so that's where I see you guys, and the whole purpose of what Red Earth does is Red Earth is here to come alongside and provide the indigenous knowledge, the tools, the resources to get you guys to that point. But you have to take responsibility in the moment and decide if you are going to climb the mountain. And the third kind of thought today is until you decide, nothing else matters. You can, look in the mirror, you can stop blaming other people, but at some point you have to decide that I'm going to take this on, that this is what I want, this is who I am, and this is where I'm going. And no one can influence that but you. But the beautiful news is guys, we're right here. You guys have an incredible community behind you. You have incredible resources. You've got a team. You have training. You have the Sherpa knowledge, right? You've got everything right ahead of you. The point is you've got to go that final 40 feet every single day, every single week, every single month, and just make up your mind that this is who I am and this is what I'm about. And nobody can do that for you. And so if you find yourself kind of in this place or this position, I would say, listen, take a step back and get real honest about what it is that you truly want to go for. And say, you know what? I do want to climb this mountain. I am deciding to commit here. I'm not taking the placebo anymore. I'm not doing the ineffective way. I'm going to stop blaming every situation with if, and I'm going to decide to move forward. And if you are willing to do that, you've got an incredible group of people around you. You've got an incredible group of resources, and you can influence discipline because now you're prepared, you've decided, you're hungry enough, and it's simply taking the steps to move forward. So that wraps up today's call. As always, if anybody wants to connect one-to-one, I'm available. Matt Ham, you can email me, matt@uprint.life. That's YOUPRINT.LIFE. My cell for anyone who's interested is 910-619-4644. But I hope you guys will use this to influence and push you toward greater excellence individually as we move toward greater excellence corporately. You guys have a good week.